When I play up game and then talk, I'm trying, Jennifer.
Rip City, what is up? This is Sean. I'm here joined with Fawad for another episode. We are back again on Tuesday for our weekly schedule. Fawad, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about Blazers tonight. I missed last week, so I have a lot to get off my chest. But yeah, let's get to it. I know this is probably the most important thing going on tonight in the world, but uh, let's get to it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Fawad alluded to, it's election night. So if you're listening to this, I feel ya. Escapism is real for all of us. And whoever you voted for, I hope you did because it's an important night. But we're here to talk about Blazer basketball as we do. So just to start things off, Fawad, what'd you see from the team this past week?
This past week was really good for Blazers basketball. I was really excited. Every single game, I was like so into it, so hooked. I think the standout, which I think everyone would agree, Delano Banton, he played amazing. DB Hooper, whatever his nickname is, all his nicknames are so good. Um, but he just I don't even know, man. He just came in. I think the first game was against the Thunder. Came in the last couple of minutes. He had like 11 in like a few minutes, and I was like, okay, nice game. He played against like the third string. It's fine. Like I was excited, but it wasn't really that crazy. The next game, we're down. What was it? Like 26 to the Suns, and he comes in and he single-handedly pretty much brings us back all the way to 2 points, and then he almost that three rimmed out, but he almost gave us the lead too. It was just like a crazy game, and he did it again last game, which was the against the Pelicans. He had 20 points on like 8 for 9 or something like that. So that was crazy. I think he's been the standout. It seems like most of our followers agree because we've been doing the post game surveys, and he just won 2 in a row. So that's been really exciting to see. Uh, yeah, I think for sure he's been the standout of last week for me.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Benton has been awesome to watch. It has been a super fun week of basketball. I mean, the Blazers went 2-2, which is about as good of a stretch as I could have hoped for. I swear, if we play the Pelicans 82 games in a year, we might be a playoff team. So there's something there. But yeah, Benton has been
Hey,
awesome.
you know
Credit to
what?
Chauncey for. Oh, go ahead.
I might make a hot take really early right now. I think we're making the playoffs anyways. I,
That that is
you
a
know,
hot take.
That might be some recency bias with this week, but I've been loving what I've been seeing, even in the losses, and I think playoffs are definitely on the table for us if we want to make them.
Yeah, I mean we're hanging around, and even some of our losses have been a lot of
Encouraging.
positives to take out of them. We've been competitive, and you know, contrary to what Alex and I were commiserating about last week, I've seen a lot of improved effort and just a lot of positives to take out of the last week. And I was going to say credit to Chauncey for using Banton in a really unique role that I haven't seen in really basketball before at all, where he's coming in as a closer, which is just a strange role, but it's been working somehow. He's basically Mariano Rivera walking out to enter Sandman in the fourth quarter and dropping 20 points like he did in the Pelicans game and wrapping things up for us. I'm wondering now, Fawad, do you think he's earned a more steady part of the rotation? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's been mostly used in those fourth quarter situations. Do you think at this point he's earned more minutes earlier on in the game?
It's tough. A part of me wants to just keep it going and see what comes out of it. Just play him only in the fourth quarter against, it doesn't matter what the score is, just put him in and let him play the whole fourth quarter and see what happens. Kind of testing out that closer theory, like it maybe the fresh legs do something. So I kind of really do want to see that keep going, but he's definitely played good enough to earn more minutes to be a part of the regular rotation. Um, so I would definitely like to see him in the next game or next couple games have some earlier minutes. I think there's been a couple guys who could stand to lose a couple minutes who've not played as well as Delano, in my opinion. I think that would be exciting to see. But one thing that kind of tangential, one thing I really loved about Delano, in that post game interview, not the walk off one, but in the locker room, he was asked like what he thinks his role is moving forward or something similar to that, and he was like he's good with whatever. He was like whatever coach asks me, like I'm down to do. I'm not complaining about anything. So I really like that, even though he's had 3 games in a row now where he's had limited minutes and he's like taken as much advantage of them as possible. He's still down to do whatever the team needs from him. I think that's a really positive attitude, and I think you know if we do want to test out this closer theory and just play him in the fourth quarter for the next like 78 games or whatever, I think he's down for that. So let's just see what works best for the team. But next game I think let's try him earlier, and then after that we can see.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's when you think about it, it's a really cool story. I mean, this is a guy who was traded for, I think, a top 55 protected pick, which is maybe the lowest of value more than cash considerations for a trade I've ever seen before. He was preseason battling for the last spot, the 15th man spot. Like he was really close to not making the roster. And now in our
Mhm.
fan poll, he's been MVP the last 2 games, had the last 2 post-game interviews. I don't know about you, but his voice absolutely caught me off guard. Not a guy I've heard speak before, but yeah, that definitely jumped out at me. But it's a cool story, and it's something the Blazers need. Just a little bit of a pleasant surprise that a lot of the guys who were question marks coming into the year have maybe been underperforming. I think maybe outside of Toumani, who really took a jump. But Banton is a guy who seemingly came out of nowhere and is really kind of outproduced what we expected of him, and I'm happy for him. I mean, how else can you feel about a guy who is fighting for a roster spot and is well on his way to earning another contract? And speaking of which, and this is my last Banton question, but I think he deserves the first 10 minutes of the pod the way he's been playing.
For sure.
Um, what are we going to do with him? Because at this point, he's a free agent next year. He, like I mentioned, was battling for a 15th man spot. This guy is not someone who came in as part of the long term plan. If he continues, maybe not this level of play, because this is higher than I would expect him to continue at, but continues to be a steady contributor, do we have space for him? Do we have room? Do we feel comfortable paying him, anywhere between 7 and 12 million for his services? How do you feel about that?
So before I answer that question, I'm actually gonna. This is something I should have mentioned like right off the bat. But you reminded me of it when you talked about his voice and his accent. So he actually grew up like literally like 15 minutes away from me.
Oh,
I'm from. We're both in the Greater Toronto area, the GTA. I'm from a city called Vaughan. He's from not even a city, but like a town, I guess is probably what it is. A community. I don't know what the technical term is, but Rexdale, and that's literally like less than 20 minutes away from me. So it's really cool. But like everyone in the GTA, like not everyone, but a lot of people, they talk exactly like him, and I knew he was from here. So that voice did not catch me off guard at all until I saw like Blazers fans talking about it, and then it just brought a smile to my face. Like there's literally like we call it like a Toronto man's. So there's a Toronto man's on our team, and it's just really fun. So because he's from like from Toronto, and he was drafted to the Raptors, I've been following him a little bit since he was drafted. And I don't watch Toronto nearly as much as I watch Portland, but what I did see from him, I liked. So when we got him last year, I was excited for it already, and I think he played good for us last year too. At the end of it, like again, I was
he
busy a
did.
lot of last year, so I didn't watch a ton of it. But what I saw, I liked. So if he's continuing this good play already this season, I think we keep it going. We keep him until he's maybe until he's not playing good or even after that. Like I'm down to give him another based on how he's playing, assuming he keeps up at least an average level of play throughout the rest of the year. I'm down to give him another contract, even if it's 7, 10, 15 million. It'll depend on how the rest of the season goes. But I'm definitely down to keep him as a long-term piece. I think he could be good. He's still pretty young. He's 24, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I'm 25, so I think he's actually probably 25 because we're also born in the same year. Um, but yeah, I think I'm down to just go with the flow, see what happens. If someone offers us like a great piece for him, then maybe I'm open to trading him. But unless there's like a offer that we can't refuse, I think I think he could be a long-term piece. Maybe he's not like a future all-star, but I think he could definitely be a starter for us for the next
I
few years.
totally agree. I like what I see this year early on, and last year. You're totally right. To end the year, just want granted, this is a tank roster where Duop Reith looked great, and like we had a lot of guys who wouldn't be playing minutes on a competitive team, putting up numbers, but he was one of the better players during that time span. But I have to mention, like Rip City, now a Canadian stronghold. We have Shaden Sharp, we have Delano Banton,
Mm.
and we have Fawad. So what more could you possibly want? We got the Canadian connections, and yeah, like I mentioned, cool story. Happy for Delano. I hope he keeps it up. I I'm so torn on wanting to see him early on because, like I mentioned, this is a really unique situation where he's having this closer role and it's working so well. So part of me is like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But
Mhm.
at a certain point, having a ball handling, I mean, I don't even know where you put him positionally. I get he's kind of running point guard, but he's also like 6'7", 6'8". So I'm wondering if you can use him as like um, like a big playmaker in an
Mhm.
off-ball role. I don't know, but it's questions like these that I think if you're asking him, something went right, and so
Yeah.
as Blazer fans, when something goes right, I think we got to take a moment to appreciate it and just hope that this good play from him continues.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's not knowing whether he's a point guard or a small forward is probably a good problem to have. Yeah, it's a 6'9" point guard is like crazy. 6'7", 6'8", whatever he is.
Yep, yep, absolutely agree. And now, Fawad, I'm gonna kick it to you because I know you had some thoughts on Deni. I want to hear him. His play this year has been pretty polarizing. His numbers haven't been great. I know a lot of the stuff he's done outside of the box score has been pretty positive, and I know you have some thoughts on it. So I want to hear kind of your opinion on how he's played, and even more than just this past week for really the whole year, and kind of what you see for him going forward.
Sure. I mentioned this in one of our. It might have been our very first episode of this season. I wasn't as big of a fan of the trade as a lot of other people were. I think people were very excited for it, and for him. But I mentioned something like I haven't seen a whole lot of him, but I scouted him before the draft because we were rumored to pick him. And I watched a little bit of him while he was on the Wizards, and I was never ever impressed with him. I thought he was not a great player. A lot of people are saying it now, but I thought this back then too that he was basically a slightly better Mario Hezonja. So I wasn't too excited about the trade. I didn't think he was going to be that good for us. People kept bringing up his strengths and how his last year was really good, and I'll admit his last year on the Wizards was good, but even then, it wasn't like they were the 15 seed. I think that's not. You have to take it with a grain of salt when a player plays well. So I was cautiously optimistic. I was hoping he has a good season with us, but he's kind of playing like what I expected. His shot is not there, which should not be surprising to anyone because he's like a career like 30% shooter, maybe even less. Because last year is the only year he was even like average, and honestly, even then he might have been below average. I don't know what the numbers are, but his first 3 years, like he could not shoot at all. So it's not surprising that he kind of regressed back to what his normal is, rather than keeping up a randomly good shooting year. So that part didn't surprise me. Um, the rest of his offensive game doesn't seem to be, or sorry, let's say his scoring game doesn't seem to be there either. He's missing so many bunnies, so many like floaters, layups. His finishing doesn't seem to be great either. I think hopefully I'm hoping that part comes around at least, but I don't think his shooting is gonna get much better than it is. I know he's not gonna keep up this like 1 for 15 or whatever he's at now, but I don't think he's gonna get much better than what it is. Um, but I'm not. I'll end on a positive note. I don't think it's been all bad. His defense is a lot better than I expected. Him and Toumani at the wings. I think that's giving teams hell. It's really hard for especially smaller guards to deal with. So that's been a pleasant surprise. He's also been way faster than I expected. He's like these fast breaks. Even if he's not scoring, I think there has been a lot of times where he's creating opportunities for other people. with his speed, he's just pushing the pace, pushing the ball up, and someone else gets the layup. So I think he's still been contributing in some ways, but definitely not the price that we paid, in my opinion, and definitely not for what people expected of him. And then just last game, like I don't think he played the entire fourth quarter. So I think it's becoming more of an issue that even Chauncey doesn't really trust him in the fourth quarter of a close game anymore. Potentially, maybe it was just one game where he felt he needed to sub him out. But the way this season has been going, and we're 10% into the season now, eight games, I don't think he's shown a lot. I think he should be benched soon, as soon as Shaden comes back, but possibly even before then. But yeah, I think I'm not too happy with him. What do you think?
Man, I want to like him so bad, and I want to be happy with the trade so bad. When it happened, my whole group chat was all pissed off about it. I was happy about it. And it's still early, and if this is the player we get, it's not like a catastrophe. He's still a net positive, in my opinion, not by any plus minus statistics or anything, but I think he's still a good player, and he still makes good basketball plays that don't show up on the box sheet. But it's what I said in, 3 or 4 episodes ago, where if he's not hitting the three ball, the value of this trade really goes down. And he has not only not hit the three ball, he has been ice cold. And having a big who can dribble, defend, pass, but not shoot is just so different than having someone who can also spread the floor there. It just totally changes the entire offense. And I hope he turns it around. I don't think it's out of the picture that he does, but at this point, I mean, we're, something like 10% through the season or something like that. It's impossible to say that he's played great in this first stint. But that being said, I think we're getting the floor of Deni right now. And I think that there's more game that he hasn't shown. And I'm hopeful that he will do it. Am I certain he will? Absolutely not. And the good news is if he doesn't, we'll have a decent player that, sure, we probably overpaid for, but when we forget about the picks that are gone, the contract is still fine and we can live with that. We had a surplus of picks anyways. But man, I really thought he took a big jump last year that would carry over, and I just haven't seen the consistency or the carryover that I was hoping for, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do think he'll get a little bit better, but how much? I don't think a lot. I don't. I'm always skeptical. I'm always skeptical when people randomly have a good year that's way better than their normal, and is always on a terrible team. It's just empty stats. One other comparison, I said Mario Hezonja. One other one that I've been thinking of a lot is Ben Simmons. Like literally half of his game is in transition and defense. So like outside of transition, he has like no offensive game. I think he's maybe not that harsh. I think Deni does a little bit more. But I'm not a huge fan.
Fawad, don't put that evil on Deni, man. Don't put that evil on.
It's harsh, but I mean, I'm just saying what I'm seeing, you know?
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. Like I said, I'm disappointed. Hopefully Deni he's not making an absurd amount of money, so he'll at least be on the court.
Yeah.
We can hope for that. Yeah. We can hope that he at least will continue playing basketball, unlike Simmons. But yeah, I there's not a ton of positives to take out of the start of the season for him, other than what we kind of knew we'd get coming in. The trade in the first place, in my opinion, was in some part a small gamble on that jump that he looked like he took last year being real. But if it's a swing and a miss, like I said, it won't kill us. We didn't sell the barn for it. Like we gave up some mid-tier assets for him and got a good contract for a playable wing, which, God, during the Dame era, we would have taken a playable big. We would have taken Deni at the 3 spot.
If we had this roster with Dame, like we could have won the whole thing, man. Honestly.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't like to think about it. It'll probably keep me up at night if I do, but yeah, I don't disagree. And it's such an interesting spot because Dame is like the kind of player we're missing. We just don't have that alpha take over the game scorer at all. I mean, in clutch time, we're going to, with respect to DB buckets, like we're going, or DB Hooper, we're going to Delano Banton in big possessions in the fourth. That's not how we draw it up, right? That's not a championship game plan, but it's worked for us for a couple times. But you know, it.
You
Let
know,
me ask you this, Fawad. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm definitely not the first one who thought of this, but I've just been on the trade machine trying to find ways that we can trade Ant for Dame, and it's just like how can we get this done?
Yeah,
I've seen other people talk about that on Twitter too. I mean, obviously it's a joke. I don't think there's any chance the Bucks would actually do that, but yeah.
I'll overpay for him just out of the love. No problem by me. But what I want to ask you, Fawad, is this roster, which seems to me to be deep with average to above average talent in some places. We're young. Do you think we're one superstar away from being a highly competitive team, or just being a, middle of the pack, make the playoffs but don't make any noise team?
I have two questions before I answer that. One, what do you consider highly competitive? Like contender level or like a 4 seed?
I think a 4 seed can be contender level. I think the Mavs have shown that. I mean,
Sometimes.
what were they last year? They were 4 or 5 or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah,
Um,
you know what, you're right. Okay,
I
then my second question is what do you consider a superstar? Like a top 10 player in the league?
Yeah, I would say someone. I would draw the line at like maybe someone. Gosh, it's hard to say. I'm trying
Or
to
give me
think
like
who.
a current player, like, and then add
That's
him to.
exactly what I'm trying to do. Well, this is an interesting one, which I don't think this gets us there. But what about like a Tyrese Halliburton?
Um, that's a good one. I mean, I'm not basing it off this year Tyrese Halliburton because he's been terrible this year, but
Right.
going with last year and like what his peak can be, I think maybe not this year, but yeah, I think with Halliburton and our team give us like a year or two to grow, I think yeah, we can definitely be a top, like a top 3 seed with that roster. I think that's very, obviously we're a little bit biased, even though we try to be unbiased, but like I think our young guys are pretty good. It's sharp. I like a lot. Well, I like what I see from him a lot. Toumani Kamara, this guy's like a featured defensive player of the year, probably an all-star too. Like him with Halliburton, who's already an all-star. Klingon, who I'm very high on as well. I think that's, we have a deep roster of young guys. Give us a year or two to develop. Ideally, a better coach, but we'll get to coaching in a little bit because I have a lot of thoughts on that as well. But um, yeah, I think we can make a lot of noise with that team, and maybe Sharp himself takes like a huge jump. We're gonna see when he comes back, but if he gets to an all-star level, within like 2 years, maybe that's enough. Who knows? Probably not. Like that's a little bit like if we hit like our 1 percentile ceiling, maybe. But like if Sharp becomes an all-star, maybe something else happens. Maybe Scoot also becomes an all-star. Then yeah, I think this could be a very competitive roster.
Yeah, and I think that's the linchpin right there. Is that this, in my opinion, I think we're more than one superstar away. I think we're more than one player away. But that player can come, one of those other players can come internally. We
Mhm.
have so many guys with potential who we need someone to take the jump. And again, no deep disrespect to DB Hooper. It can't be him. It's gotta be Scoot. It's gotta be Sharp. It's gotta be. I mean, even Toumani's kind of itching his way into being someone who can be reliable. But if we can really create an environment where we have a solid number two option on a competitive team, and then without getting way ahead of ourselves, we land someone like, let's say we land Flag in a best case scenario in this offseason, I think you're starting to look at a real core. And
It's gonna be tough to draft Flag when we have the 30th pick, but I see what you're saying.
maybe they'll take the 30th in Banton for the first. Who knows?
Honestly, yeah, we can try it.
But yeah, no, it's I think these are, we're a rebuilding team. We're I'd like to say tanking, but we went 2-2 the last week, so who knows? It's too
Mhm.
early to say, but we're rebuilding at the very least. And so we're we're knocking on the door. And I will say, direction wise, I feel pretty good about where we're heading. It does seem like we have some sort of a rebuild plan. Um, but it does ultimately come down on guys on like Scoot and Sharp. And if they don't take the jump, I think we might be looking at another rebuild in, 3 years or so, where all of a sudden we have, a lot of draft picks, some young guys, but we have Sharp and Scoot on big contracts where maybe not the players we thought they might be, and that could be a problem. But anyways, I wanna move off that point right now because you mentioned something earlier that I really did want to get to, and that's in Chauncey and the
Mhm.
coaching staff. So since we talked last week, and with respect, Alex and I dug into him a little bit last
For sure.
podcast. I don't
I missed
regret
it,
it.
but I heard it.
Yep, I don't regret it. I still feel that way, and I still feel reasonably strong about that way. But it's hard to ignore going 2-2. And to your point that we were talking about earlier, tough schedule. Chauncey's kept him competitive, but I want to hear your take on Chauncey. I want to see if these last 4 games have changed your opinion on how he started the season and kind of where we want to go with our coaching staff moving forward.
Sure. So, actually, you know what? Really quickly, I don't think we mentioned, but obviously Alex is not here today. He's busy taking care of his kids, doing real life things. We're just here to talk about basketball, but he might join us later on, but if not, next week. But yeah, so I made a post on Reddit about Chauncey Billups. I think it's obvious that very little Blazers fans have been had a positive opinion of him these last 3 or 4 years. But this past week I was watching these games, and the first few games of the season, like anytime we were down like 10 or something, I was like, okay, you know what, game over. It was like we'd have a good start for the first like 5 minutes, and then we're down 10 like right away, and I was like, okay, that's it, game over. And I would see like 10 minutes later, it's tied up again, or it's, we have the lead. So that happened a couple of times, and I was like, okay, it's good to see some fight from this team. Then I see then I see the games that kind of like put me over the edge. And okay, again, let me say what my opinion of Chauncey is before I get to how I got there. I still don't think. I'm not saying he should win Coach of the Year. I'm not saying we should even keep him past this year. I'm not saying he's like a good coach, but I don't think from what we've seen from his first 3 years, it's very easy to make an argument that he's the worst. He's the worst coach in the league. He's not able to coach an NBA team. Um, this year, I feel like maybe he's average, maybe he's like bottom third, but not last. But again, so it's not. I'm not saying he's that good, but I think there has been some things that he has done that I think we should give some credit to. Um, so yeah, so one of those was those comebacks that he's had. None of them were huge except for the one against the Suns. I think it was the Suns, the 26-point one. The rest of them were like 10 to 12, something like that. But it's happened a couple of times that it made me think, like this last game against the Pelicans last night. We went down what, like 14 or something in the first half. I was stress free. I was watching that game like, oh nice, we're down 14. It's gonna be fun to watch us bring it back. And by what, the end of the third quarter, I think we had the lead. Maybe it was the start of the fourth quarter. So we have more of a fight this year, and that's exactly what you guys were talking about that we were missing. And I think we have been missing it last year, the year before that. But I think this year we're starting to show some signs of fight when we're down. We're not backing down once we're out. We're not. We don't have an offensive system. That's the biggest problem, and Chauncey still does not have an offensive system. So that puts us in bad position sometimes, but our defense is good. Slowly but surely, we eventually score and we get back into the game with our defense, with our fight. So I think that's been good to see. I also think that so a lot of our players have improved. Scoot, his first few games looked really good. Last few games have been a little worse, but I think he's still better than last year. Rupert has seemed to have gotten better. Um, who else? Toumani's built on last year as well. So I think we've seen improvement from a lot of young guys. Chris Murray's looking better too. So I think you never know how much of that credit goes to the coach, but I feel like if there's multiple players who seem to have gotten better, I feel like Chauncey has to had to have had at least a little bit of a hand in that. So I want to give him some credit for that. And then the last thing that I really liked from him was all this lineup stuff that he's been doing uh with with Rupert first and now Delano. Like he put in Rupert, I think it was the Clippers game. He put him in there in the fourth quarter. He gave us 7 points right away. So some credit for him for trying something new. Maybe it's a Hail Mary, but it worked. So credit to him for trying something new with Rupert. Then the next game we saw Rupert like get real minutes in the rotation too. So he's not just saying like, okay, thanks for that good run, like congrats on that game, but he's actually giving them more opportunities to get more minutes the next game and play better. Then the same thing happened with Banton. He had a few minutes in the fourth quarter. Then the next game he played the entire fourth quarter. I was expecting the game after that he played the whole game, but again he only played the fourth quarter again. But he's still seeing positive results from the games, and he's giving us more of what worked and less of what didn't work. Like Deni didn't play good, so he's not the best at X's and O's adjustments, but he's been doing a lot better with his lineups and his rotations. Like if Denny's not playing that good one game, he got less minutes. Delano got more. So I think that's been something encouraging that I don't think we've seen from him before. So I just want to give him some credit for that. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. Like I think he's been a lot better, and when people just hate on him, like every loss is his fault. I don't know if I agree with that. It's not always his fault. He's been doing his job this year, in my opinion.
I have a couple thoughts about Chauncey.
Go for it.
And I have plenty of negative things to say about him, and those have been recorded, so I'll
I
spare the
still do too,
listeners of
but
that
yeah.
today. But I don't think you're wrong. I think there's some positive, and I'll shed a little bit of light on what I'm seeing from him. And a lot of it's going to echo what you said. But the first I want to just draw some attention to is kind of his confidence and his unorthodox approach in a little ways that have worked. I think that I have a lot of respect for him for benching Scoot to start the year. And you saw it in the Pelicans game where he played bad and he got benched. And I like that. And I think Scoot needs that. I think that sends a message to the team. And you need some accountability in this franchise. And he held Scoot accountable in the Pelicans game. And I appreciated seeing that. And I don't think we win the game without it. You have some really fun stuff like the Banton closer stuff, which is unique and not something that you see throughout the league. Which I'm glad he's doing. I'm glad he's experimenting. I'd rather go down swinging than just go run out our old lineup that is clearly not competitive.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. And give us a new look, catch people off guard, try something kind of out there and just see what sticks. And I give him a lot of credit and I give him some respect for kind of sticking with his guns and for finally holding some of our players accountable and restricting rotations based on play. We've seen, like throughout the roster, we've seen DNPs for guys and then the next game they get 20 minutes. And I think that is the approach we need this year. I think we need guys to be on their toes and have to earn their minutes, because if you trudge out the same guaranteed 30 minutes plus for some of our young guys that we're hoping are going to take a jump, I don't think they're going to take the jump. I don't think they're going to have anything to play for, because I don't know that we're playing for a playoff spot. I know you think it's possible. I know that's your hot take, Fawad. I might disagree with you there. But I think to keep them engaged, if you can hold them accountable with playing time, I think that's really one of the only options he has.
Yeah, yeah. Let me hear like some more about what you don't think he's doing right. I know you talked about it last episode, but like obviously, I think his offensive lack of system is probably the biggest thing. But like, let me hear some of your dislikes.
Well, it's hard to say after this week because I thought a lot of it was improved in the last week. Early on in the season, prior to this week, I saw really low effort, and I saw disengagement. And I thought this week he made the adjustment and mixed up the rotation enough and sat guys when they weren't giving full effort. And that's what I wanted to see out of him. And that was my biggest gripe with him in last week's pod. So while I need to see 82 games of that to feel good about it, and
Mhm.
Chauncey's been our coach for a few years now. I mean, the sample size is much bigger than this last week, which I see is pretty positive. Um, that's really been the issue I've had with him because we need we need accountability with the young guys, and I think this week we got it. Outside of that, something you touched on, but just our offensive system is bad. It's just straight up bad. And I don't know that it's all on him. Sometimes I see good ball movement in spurts, but a lot of times it looks like either we're bricking a three or we're just diving to the rim and hoping we get fouled or an offensive rebound because we got some big guys down there. Um, or just the general pick and roll and no action beyond that. But I will say I haven't seen as much ISO balls last year, which I'm happy about. The effort this past week has seemed better, and it's been reflected in our record by going 2-2. And so, I'm certainly not ready to say Chauncey's fixed our problems. This is the guy going forward. But if we can build on a week like this continuously and continue to get better and continue to improve on the basic things, right? Not a record, like shooting at some level. I think that's a player issue, not a coaching issue. If you're getting an open three and you're missing, that's on the guy, not on the coach. But having some sort of system, having some sort of rotation to catch guys off guard, playing a little scrappier. I think those kinds of things, if we could build on what we've seen in this week, I'm going to feel okay with how he coached this year.
You mentioned there's less ISO ball this year, and I want to transition a little bit to Jerami Grant. Unless you had any more thoughts on Chauncey.
No, I love it. Go for it.
Let me hear your thoughts first, actually, about how you think Jeremy's played this year.
It's tough to say. He to me has been extremely like hot and cold.
Mhm.
And he's not a player we can afford to have hot and cold. He should be our maybe one of two or three guys who is consistent, and he hasn't been. Um, so overall, I think reasonably disappointing. He started off the year really well, I thought. First few games he played well. But he's such a interesting player because, in my opinion, like I think he's best at a stretch four, but you have to knock down threes to be a stretch four, right? You have to shoot lights out to be a stretch four, and he hasn't, at least consistently. And for what we're paying him, I don't think he can create off the dribble like nearly as much as we need him to with this roster. Um, but it's also an interesting like thing where our roster is really bad, and he is one of the best players on it, so it's hard to really criticize too much. But to me, he can't be your best player on a team. He has to be like your third option. And in that role, he could be really good, I think, on a good team. But in the situation we have for him here, where we need him to score 20 points pretty much every game, I just don't think it's a good fit. And I think we're starting to see that with some dropped levels of play in the last few games.
I agree with a lot of what you said. Um, so I won't repeat it much because I think you covered it really well. But I did want to talk about. I just want to back up some of what you said. He's been very hot and cold. All on our post game surveys, it's either like above like 7.5 or like 5 or below. So the fans agree with you. Um, but yeah, what I wanted to talk about with him specifically, I think even though he's been shooting it pretty poorly after the first few games, I actually have been liking what I've been seeing from him a lot. At least a lot more than in previous years. I think in previous years, when if he had a bad game, he would just iso ball constantly, take contested shots all the time, and just even if there's like multiple defenders on him, he just like take a lot of bad shots. I feel like he's doing that less this year. I feel like there's been very few isos. He's been catch and shooting a lot more. He's I think he's just taking smarter shots. He's taking less shots. He's driving in more. So I think that has been encouraging, even though his shot hasn't been falling. I think his like what do people like call it, like a shot diet or something like that, has been a lot better. I'm hoping this is just a cold stretch shooting wise, and if he keeps playing the same way, I think when he heats back up, I think it's going to be really nice to see. I also think his defensive effort has been a lot better as well. I think he's been a lot more active there, and just he's just been playing better defense as well. So yeah, I thought that was I don't know, that was interesting to me because I felt like he's shooting terribly, but I've never seemed to really get mad at how bad he's playing or at how bad he's shooting the same way I would with like Ant or something like that. So I was like, why is that? And I thought about that a little bit more, and I was like, I think he's taking better shots. There's really nothing I can complain about. He's just missing them. So
Yeah,
yeah, that was just
and
something I want.
that's it's the way it goes. It's like, and I think that goes back, like, this is a difficult situation because he's not a superstar. He's not really even a star. I think he's like the highest level of elite kind of fringe role player, third option kind of guy. Um, it, and I don't mean role player like fourth or fifth guy. I think third option is where he should sit. And in a third option, you can afford those off nights. But on our team, you really can't. But it's not fair to ask him to carry this team and score 22 a night or whatever to stay competitive when the roster's not competitive. And you touched on something that I think is kind of become a point with the Blazers, and something, the biggest change I've seen from last year to this year, and what I'm hoping can kind of become our identity. But the defense across the board has been pretty good, in my opinion. Um, I know Toumani in the starting lineup is making a big difference. I think Deni is making a big difference. Klingon is elite back there as a shot blocker. I just saw a stat today that he's the number one in the NBA on shots blocked per 36, which
Mhm.
is great. He's not ready to play 36 by any stretch, but the defense is real. That shot blocking is real, and it's something we need to continue to kind of utilize. But I mean, this is one of the better defensive rosters for a Blazers team I've seen in like 5 years, which is weird to say for a
Probably more
tanking
than that,
team.
honestly.
Yeah, honestly. I think Dame is a big reason for that. I mean, as much as I love the guy, he like statistically was one of the worst defenders in the NBA.
See,
Obviously, oh, go
see, you
ahead.
would think that, but Ant is probably like one of the few guys that's worse than Dame, and we're still doing good. So I don't know.
That's a good point. That is a good point. I think it's having some length besides him. You can
Yeah, I think
kind
that's
of hide it, you know? Like, I don't think it's CJ's fault, but like trudging out Dame and CJ together, you're just gonna get bullied in the backcourt. And we didn't have like a absolute eraser, like a Gobert kind of player to kind of make up for that. And it just always was our Achilles heel, and it bit us over and over again in the playoffs. This year I'm really happy with what I'm seeing defensively. I mean, the issue is 3-point shooting, in my opinion, which, like, this is the most opposite Blazers team from the Dame era I've seen in a while. And so I just think that's interesting. But just to close things out, I want to touch on one guy who needs to be mentioned for his play, and I know you love the guy. Toumani Camara has been playing really, really good basketball all over the court, both sides of the court. Um, Looking at our fan surveys through our last 4 games, which we try to go kind of pod by pod, and that's the sample we have for this. He's our top rated player, and I'm starting to believe in the jump. I'm starting to believe that he really has taken some sort of step to be a legit NBA starter and a plus starter. I have a feeling how you're going to feel about this because I know you love the guy, but I want to hear your thoughts on the improvement and if it's sustainable going forward.
Oh man, yeah, I 100% love Toumani. I'm probably like this close to getting blocked by like 3 different friend groups for talking about him too much. Groups that have like they don't even watch basketball. I'm just like ranting to them about how good this guy is. But yeah, he's amazing. I definitely believe that the jump is real. You mentioned our survey. He not just the last 4 games, but on the season, he's highest by I think like a fair bit. His average score, he's come in second. In the survey multiple times. So he's just really good on both ends. He's guarding the best player every single game on the other team. It doesn't matter if it's a guard, a wing, whatever. He's guarding them and guarding them well. I think Ingram, like last game's probably the best anyone has done on Toumani. Although Toumani wasn't guarding him the entire game, but he's just a great defender. He's so smart. I don't know if the numbers show it. I was looking at his defensive rating. It didn't look crazy to me. It's also a small sample, and we've been playing really good teams, so maybe that's why. But yeah, like he's a great defender. Like I think he's if he keeps this up for the rest of the season, I feel like he definitely deserves an all defense team nomination spot, whatever it's called. I feel like he's been that good. And then it's not just that; it's his offense, and he's hustling constantly too. Not like there's been so many possessions where we miss and then he comes out of nowhere, gets a putback, or he gets the rebound, or he tips the rebound and someone else grabs it. Like he's just creating other opportunities in whatever way he can. Like he affects, he affects the game almost every possession. It feels like, and that's crazy. He doesn't like at least on one end every possession he's there. He's creating another opportunity. He's getting a stop. He's just doing whatever. And then on top of that, he has a shot now. Like he's shooting like 50% on the season. He's only shooting like 2 shots a game, so it's not a lot, but it's it's 8 games into the season now, and he's still shooting like 50%, and his shots looking consistent. It's looking smooth. Um, so that's been exciting to see. He's also been attacking the rim a little bit. Like I saw last game, he had the ball at 3 point line. He drove in on Brandon Ingram. So it's just he's expanding his game like every single game. It feels like he's not just a defender. He's not just a hustle player. He's not just a 3 and D like spot up shooter. He's doing everything. That's why I'm so high on him. I think it's it's just you don't see a player like him a lot. He's very special. I think he's a big part of our future, and I might be. I think I'm most excited about him even more than Sharp and Scoo. Like the way he's been playing, I feel like he's gonna be really special.
Toumani, I believe, is the guy that we traded for Deni to get. I think when we traded for Deni,
Bring that
we
up. Sorry,
wanted.
I'm gonna cut you off. I was really that the number one reason outside of Denny's like Washington play, the number one reason why I didn't like the trade is because I thought it was gonna eat into Tumani's minutes, and I was not happy about that then. But he's a starter now anyway, so it's all good. So continue. My bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Toumani is the player who we wanted when we got the Deni trade. I think that's what we were hoping for. And the jump looks real. Again, we're a few games into the season. Let's see it for 82. But we're talking about a guy who can defend at an elite level, whose ball handling is significantly improved to more than passable, who's shooting at a high efficiency rate, who is playing connected basketball and is making plays, who's making winning plays outside of the box score. And that's what we wanted when we got Deni. I think if the front office knew that Toumani was going to take the jump that he looks like he has, I don't think we make the Deni trade, to be honest with you. And having both guys isn't a bad thing to do. It's a good problem to have, really. But with how good Toumani has looked, I don't think we make that trade if we knew that this is the player we're going to have this year. And I totally believe that he's a part of our core and has worked himself. He's forced himself into being one of the, I don't want to say cornerstones, but one of the players that is going to stick around for 5+ years here because he has everything we need out of that position. He needs a star next to him to be a competitive team. I don't think he's a 25 point a game scorer. I mean, I know you're one of his biggest fans. I don't even think you would believe that, but he does all the things you need out of him to win basketball games, and I'm really happy for him to see him putting it together a little bit.
Yeah, I just every game, it's just I love what I see from him. I think he's honestly been our best player, and I'm not sure if it's even close.
No, I don't disagree. I mean, I think the fans agree with you too. The
Mhm.
fan score looks like it's about the highest out of the whole team. And again, kind of the way we frame that is against their average level of play. But if he's beating expectations, I mean, for a young guy, that's all I really ask for. Um, well, yeah, Fawad, any closing thoughts? Any other topics you want to touch on before we wrap up?
Um, I don't think so. I think we talked about everything I wanted to talk about. Anything else that you want to touch on?
No, I don't think so. First of all,
Y-
just want to give a shout out to you. As you guys have seen, Fawad's done an awesome job on social media. We're we're crushing on there thanks to him. He's putting out a ton of great content. So go follow us on Instagram. Go check us out on Reddit where Fawad's posting post game surveys every single game to get these fan scores we've been referencing. And thankfully to both Fawad and I and the listeners should be back next week where he'll be able to lead the podcast. You won't have to listen to me through it. But yeah, no, I think it's been a great week, a 2-2 week. Let's hope for more of these in the future. And yeah, go Blazers.